I'm calling from Los Angeles, and I'm having a little problem under the name ThatUmbrellaGuy. I sent him my phone number at least 20 times in the chat and told him to call me. He ignored me. I'm a man. I filed the report. If you guys could take a look at it and give me a call back, I would love to hear what you guys can do to help us. We really need to kind of stop this guy at least until Monday. I told him to call me. I'm a man.
I deleted my heart and I really want it back. I don't want to feel like I might be a sociopath. I deleted my heart. I was young and impulsive and I would download another, but I'm afraid it wouldn't fit. I deleted my heart. 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 I deleted my heart.
Hey, we love that umbrella guy. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Under my umbrella.
All right, what's up, folks? How are you doing today? Man, welcome to the misadventures of Netflix, bad PR, and more. Starring some really horrible people. Man, let me catch these two. AJ Stone, thank you right off the bat with 5 gifted memberships too. Thank you for that. And Fallen Hero, thank you for 5 gifted memberships as well. Fallen, AJ, both of you, always here. Love you, folks. Seriously, love all of you, though. It has been such a crazy time. I don't know if you've been listening to Signor, Popcorn Planet recently. They've been talking litigation. Now, I'm gonna be pretty transparent with a thought on this. Okay, litigation is not cheap. All right, so going, what we're talking about is Netflix here. They did indeed. They approached some people. They licensed some people's clips. Some people, I made it very clear. I made it very clear that I do not willingly participate in any of this. I do not do interviews. Unless it's like indie or a journalist that I think there are a few. There are very few that I would say, yeah, that person. I actually like that person. But interviews, no. None of that. And documentaries, I made it very clear I didn't want to be in any documentaries. I did not give any permission whatsoever. My light is, my stuff was used twice and minimally compared to, say, Signors. Now, the problem becomes not just the use of something, but Netflix is striking people. And on top of striking people, they're going after their original content as well. So, and what I mean by that is this Warner Brothers Discovery pulled this too. They're claiming that the original content that they took and put without, even if they did license it, they still don't own it. But they're claiming ownership of the original thing. So that's a problem. Now, the one side of that, though, the idea of litigation, that is an expensive beast. Like for me, see, I give pause. Like the only time I really want to sue is if I really have to. If I needed the goodwill of people, then I would ask. But to be on the hook for hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially, we've seen that with other folks. We've seen that. I saw the first case I ever really covered, Vic Mignogna. Vic Mignogna, he had almost $300,000. He didn't make it past the anti-slap portion, and it exhausted it. I mean, you're talking no telling how much money. And Netflix, places like that, they will bleed you. They have the financial solvency to do whatever they want. They can bleed you for years. You could be involved in something. And yes, you may be in the right, but they're not going to do it in the right now. To top that off, some of it may just be vindictiveness. We've had a lot of things to say about places like Netflix. I've talked a lot about places I find it fascinating that they back shows like Cuties, for example. And on top of that, they backed another type of abuser in an Amber Heard, for example. Now that series is a mess too. There are major problems in it. There are out and out lies. There are things they just flat out ignore and leave out. And again, there's the whole point in that is to really say social media was the thing that caused the decision. It blames everything on that. Now, there's been let me show you a couple of things that were wrong in this. First of all, one of the big ones actually, so Milani Cosmetics, the cosmetic wheel that was showcased in the trial, they said that the video that they put up, it had been taken down, essentially trying to tell you that it had been taken down because of backlash. And that's not true. It is actually still up there. So that was an out and out just lie. And it was told to the entire world, and that is, it's potentially brand damaging to do that, for them. That company has been targeted relentlessly. I mean, relentless. And to lie about it and make it look like, essentially it's trying to make it look like, maybe they made a mistake and they feel bad about it, and they don't. They don't at all. Now, Vasquez, actually, there's been some back and forth on this. I'm going to play it for you. I personally, I'll explain how I see these particular lawyers versus, say, an Adam Wallman. Adam Wallman's he is a counterpunching attack dog. He would call this thing out in a heartbeat. He wouldn't be nice about it at all. He would just throw the elbow. Now, Camille Vasquez, they like when Camille Vasquez talks about this, she takes it and wrecks it a different way. She does it through, oh, well, yeah, that's actually a great documentary. Why? Well, you pointed out why we won. And it's a different process, but the flattery type, a lot of people don't see the nuance to it. So I want to play that whole thing through with you, and I want to talk about it while we do it. What's up, Joetta? Thanks for the 10 there. Andy hired PR firm. See, that's funny. That's funny. Like going in. Actually, here's the thing I want to get across too. Like, people do not understand this. Amber Heard and her PR team are playing a long game. They figure on a long enough timeline, they can retell this thing. They are active. They are very active. They are behind the scenes. I know this. I know it for a fact. This is not conjecture, okay? Just to make that very clear. They are in league with the media. They are in league with certain social media presence, let's say. You know a couple of them. You know people like Barlow. But there are other ones that you might not really notice. They've given away their game before by telling you they were in league with Heard's lawyers and stuff, but people don't recognize them. But they are active PR. If you look at what happened, though, with the film festival with AH, you could see the proof of the PR firm. Just look at it. Look at it. Look at what happened. Look at what happened with the police. Look at the narrative that was shopped to the media, and look at the media that was involved. It's not friendly media. There's a difference. There's media, maybe misled media. There's friendlies, and then there's shill media. The shill media in the pocket of, and yeah, they exist. I mean, because again, on a long enough timeline, they figure they can relitigate. And there are people out there that say, well, we all saw the trial, right? Yeah, and this, you got to remember, the population has the mindset, they have the memory of about a gnat, right? They have the TikTok mentality. On top of that, there are people that believe in everything from flat earth, lizard people. I mean, come on. Over a long enough timeline, you can inundate the public with a message and play that long PR game, and it may just work. Book deal over time. You drop that thing out in the public. I mean, again, all of it. It all works for it. And you're going to, I mean, again, AH may not have a career at the end of this right now, but she certainly has a free hand to say whatever the hell she wants. And really, it hasn't been coming out of her mouth because she's probably afraid of litigation. It's been coming out of her PR firm's mouths. Really, it's been coming out of other people's mouths. But yeah, the connection there, I mean, it is so easy to see. And again, that's not conspiracy. I mean, that is reality. What's up, Monica? Thanks for the 2. Is that looks like a birthday thing, actually. I saw somebody mention they had a birthday, by the way. I don't remember who that was, but happy birthday to you. I saw it, but it scrolled by really, really fast, and I couldn't see it. So if I notice it again, I'll definitely shout it out. But here is the Camille Vasquez interview. I want to play this whole thing for you. It's definitely going to, actually, give me 1 second. I am going to cut off something in the beginning because you know what? Netflix has one thing that will trigger their copyright thing. So at the very beginning, she says, "Oh, this is a good deal from Netflix." So what they're doing, by the way, so they're claiming anything that has that beginning music in it or anything else. This isn't theirs, but they'll still claim it. Why? Because it has a clip with their music in it. They're using it. I believe some of it is system targeted, but some of it I think is intentional targeting. But here, I skipped a little bit there. It had the beginning, and she says, she gives praise to the documentary, but look at how this praise is framed. Okay, because I think this is an important distinction.
Depp versus Heard. What was it like for you to go back and relive that trial via the docuseries? was fascinating. I mean, just to see the way that Emma put together that docuseries, I found it really interesting. She utilized the court testimony in a way that...
I guess it had more praise at the beginning than there too.
Told a really compelling, truthful account.
Truthful account is a bunch of shit, by the way. Again, you know, I believe that Ben Shue and Camille Vasquez wants a job in the mainstream. Very much so. And I believe they're both afraid to burn bridges. Like Adam Wallman doesn't give a shit. He's just like, hey, I got a torch. I'm going to set this thing on fire because truth. They're afraid. So again, they will, they weaponize flattery, I suppose. But it's also, I think, a fear of burning bridges. Because at the end of it, what's on the other side of it? And I don't mean that in a negative way necessarily. I just mean that in a matter of fact way. You know, you see the operation there. I personally I am more of the Adam Waldman type. I can't stand fucking hollow flattery. I like to have to give that there. You could tell it. Like if I were giving hollow flattery, it would show. You'd hear it. I mean, it would just be so. I'd be like, yeah, what a great truthful series. Oh man, it was such a, you know, you really be able to tell. There'd be no question. What's up, Pixlexia? What's up? I haven't seen you in a while. Thanks for the 5. Happy birthday to the person who shares the same birthday as me. Woo! Also give a complimentary y'all tug. What's up, Pixlexia? Birthday, huh? Happy birthday. Everybody give Pixlexia some birthday love. That's awesome.
Of what took place inside those 4 walls in Virginia.
And, you know, there was what was taking place within those 4 walls. And then there was the world outside. There was the social media firestorm. What was it like for you really being at the center of that?
You know, it's interesting, and that's a great question, because while we were there inside doing our jobs, we didn't really understand the impact this case was having on social media all over the world. Yeah. You know, towards the end, we started getting messages or people sending us things, but really, for the most part, we had no idea that there was this media social storm brewing outside.
I don't think I've seen anybody do a better job. So go Camille Vasquez.
I like how they got them. And you notice, like, what's fascinating about this interview here is it will shape over time, and it will take on the shape of more friendly dialogue. It's not combative. You know, it reminds me, I've noticed the combative dialogue versus, you remember when, right after the trial, you remember when Heard's lawyer was going out and doing interviews? Remember how combative they were? You know, oh, everybody in the world is at fault. You know, the jury, the judge, all you, you know, everybody, you know, the media, the people they were talking to. Oh, it's everybody's fault. And it was really combative. And it shapes the dialogue that you have, because, you know, if they notice that willingness to go there. Now, the difference would be, you've noticed an Adam Waldman hasn't given an interview, for example. If an Adam Waldman gives an interview, it'll happen sooner or later, I suppose. Maybe. You know, he'll do it on his terms, I'm sure. But he would come preloaded. You know, he would... He would have sourcing and everything else. You know, he would have examples. Like, I don't know. I would love to see people, like, I just wish people could see that in an interview, because I think it would blow people's minds. You know, somebody who knows the case. You know, we talk about people who know the case. Oh man, people could write a book. That guy, like he built the case. Other people tried his case, but he built that case. That was his case. Anyway, continue.
So you were unaware that there were essentially millions of people talking about you every day online.
We really were unaware, and it was, I'm grateful that we weren't aware at the time, because we did have a job to do, and we were so incredibly busy during that time that we didn't have the time to focus on what was happening outside of our war rooms and that courtroom.
It was an act of profound cruelty, not just to Mr. Depp, but to true survivors of domestic abuse. For Ms. Heard to hold herself out as a public figure representing domestic abuse. It was false, it was defamatory, and it caused irreparable harm.
What was it like for you watching yourself in court?
What I see is actually somebody that has always believed in her client and a true advocate. I see my expressions to the evidence that's coming forward, and I very much knew the case very, very well. I knew the evidence, and I was advocating at all times for my client.
Was there one key moment when you knew that you'd won the jury over?
I don't think that we could ever be 100% sure, but there were some key moments during the trial. Johnny Depp's testimony, I think, was a key moment when he was finally, after 6 years, able to tell his side of the story.
I felt the responsibility of clearing the record as the only way that I could get to the point where I could speak has really taken this full 6 years, and it's been 6 years of trying times.
I think really, like when they get down to it, they say testimony, but the testimony wasn't, it wasn't the overall. There was a certain part of that testimony that appealed to the every person, that was talking about growing up in poverty, struggling, talking about, how that the linkage to abuse in the past. Again, the appeal to the every person. That's something that people do not respond to folks they consider not only insincere, but people that seem like elitists, and it's a strange thing to say that a person that has had that much success, that much money, owns their own island and more, still comes off as a person that you could be like, yeah, you know what, that story, you don't necessarily have to have the person themselves, but the person through their story becomes relatable. They can be unrelatable in every other experience, but if they can convey something, and that was the difference, that piece, and then that linkage through the rest of the tale, and again, there was humor, bringing in levity versus overacting. The media always says that there's no such thing as the perfect victim, the flawed victim thing, but they never point that at the man here. They never say, oh yeah, remember the attack on him. They bring up this idea that she was under attack because gold digger and other assets. Well, he was under attack the whole time because of drugs, because he was a substance abuser. The same thing we celebrated forever: sex, drugs, and rock and roll, baby. Yeah, that was the thing they tried to take him down with. And again, success, spiraling, seeing the ground floor. People can relate to having struggles. People, again, it kept it relatable. And then expert witnesses came in later and they talked things like money. He wasn't talking about divorce terms, like, right, like you had an expert that was coming in talking about she wanted this, she wanted that. And again, that made it unrelatable. But anyway, continue.
6 years, what we had were what we say unfounded allegations made by his ex-wife, Amber Heard, against him, and no response. Public.
Again, when you look at the pictures, I think it comes through. Okay, look at the two people here. Like, this is the picture of Hollywood. This is institutionalized Hollywood. That's what it looks like, right? That doesn't look like a picture of institutionalized Hollywood. It looks like somebody who's going out and trying to channel gonzo journalism from back in its day. Again, when people look at that, institutionalized Hollywood, elitism is off-putting.
Otherwise from Johnny Depp until he filed this lawsuit, and he was able to testify there 6 years later. I also think that her cross-examination, which I had the honor of doing on behalf of Mr. Depp, was a pivotal moment. Being able to confront her with her own words was so important to Mr. Depp and to our overall strategy.
Sitting here today, You have not donated the $7 million, donated, not pledged, donated the $7 million divorce settlement to charity.
I use pledge and donation synonymous with one another.
But I don't. Ms. Heard, I don't use it synonymously.
That's how donations are paid.
Ms. Heard, respectfully, that's not my question.
They also cut out. See, here's the ugliness of taking 6 weeks. The documentary points this out too. They point it out, but not really. They point it out, but as a kind of a gloss over. They even put it into the teaser. They talked about how there were hundreds of hours of footage. Okay, hundreds of hours. But they don't put in the fact that, again, she tries to blame litigation for the reason that she has not yet donated, even though she's using the word, she has to play that word off. Oh, I donated. Not I'm going to donate. Gave it all away. I mean, she still hasn't made good on it. Still hasn't. To this day, still hasn't made good on that money. But that's also, you talk about looking bad. You know, the ACLU money you could overlook. But when you claimed a children's hospital at that level for clout, and it's not just for clout, you have to think it was to weaponize the Me Too movement. Oh, man, again, that's bad. And it came through. Her losing her cool. You know, you hear, you heard the old adage, you know, a laughing jury, it's not a hanging jury. People weren't laughing with her. They weren't laughing at any part. You know, they might be laughing at, but they weren't laughing with. And you could really see it from the audience reaction. And again, everybody was reacting just like the people that were there, that were sitting behind.
Pledge versus donate. What's the difference? Explain that for us, please. And also, do you feel that was a pretty important moment?
I think it was a key moment and something that the docuseries highlighted. I think that while donations are usually pledged at the beginning and then the payment is made after, they are not used synonymously, as Ms. Heard tried to say. And the real issue that we had in this case was that for 6 years, Ms. Heard had implied and told the world and used the word donated versus.
She didn't imply. She just flat out said. She never used the word pledged. That word came in after the fact. The word in interviews was donated, you know. So the implication, there was, and she just flat out said it. You know, it wasn't like, well, she kind of implied. No, hell no. She made it very clear. She was saying, I donated. That's how that made it in. See, the other problem with things like a docuseries is they don't go back. This is not just a couple of hours in total. This is a lot of material. You have to understand why that came in. And the reason that it came in wasn't because of the statements there, giving money and not actually doing it, but rather the context. I gave money because. What was the because? Was it altruism? Of course not. It was because of a narrative. I gave money because the person that I was with was a monster. That money was dirty. That's how it came in. And in fact, the judge that allowed it to come in originally destroyed their lawyers because they were saying, look, we wouldn't have let this in normally. If she would have just went out there, talked about donate, all the money that I got from that, I decided to give it away. If there was no because statement, nothing after the fact, they would have never allowed it in. So, I mean, that's a key distinction people need to be told because they make it sound like it was something. It had nothing to do with the trial, first of all. They tried to make it sound like that. They've also tried to make it sound inconsequential, and it wasn't. It was a narrative that was weaponized around the world. And the only time that she dropped that was when people started asking questions. When you could see it start to take shape. You could see it in the documentation going into the courtroom. That was something, I remember covering that from Go. You know, you could see them start to shape the questioning about it. And from things that had already appeared in documentation, you knew that that was going to be something big. You knew that they had something there. They were trying to introduce it, but they were asking questions. They were like, "Hey, what happened to this?" And suddenly all of that went silent. And you know what was fascinating is the mainstream media, even after during and after the fact, they remained quiet about it. Why? Because they were culpable, of course. Hey, Jay, thanks for the $10. Number one fan. Man, I'm the number one fan of Netflix too, baby. Thank you, by the way. Seriously, what's up with this damn thing?
Pledged that she had donated and implied that she had paid the $7 million to charity. And when confronted with it, she tried to back out of that statement. And the truth was, she had testified under oath and had publicly said she had donated the money, implying she had paid it, when in fact she hadn't paid anywhere near $7 million.
And remember, that is all about character. If somebody will continually lie about something like that, if they will continually tell, again, anyone to build up that, to build up the context that they were an aggrieved party, that this guy was a monster, what else would they do? And remember, that wasn't the only thing. I mean, again, we watch real time. The problem with her, I can't believe her defense allowed stuff like this. The problem with her is that she took her narrative and she changed it, not just outside of the courtroom, but she tried to adapt said narrative as a reaction. I think personally, I think, with her firing her PR team, bringing in somebody that's really, I mean, they're a nasty little firm, but bringing them in, doing all of that stuff, you could tell that was a reaction to social media. So yeah, the reason that they talk about social media so much, and her PR team did, is because they couldn't have won it. People like Emma Cooper, I tell you, this documentary, if she would have won, it would have held this all as heroics. It would have talked about the Me Too stance. This was a major stepping stone, a pivotal moment. But since the person that won was a man, it doesn't matter, because that does not fit the narrative. You have somebody that is alleging that they were abused. But that person, again, they don't fit the narrative. Remember, that narrative isn't just a bunch of words. That narrative it's all the way from policy, it's politics, legal, and it is a multi-billion-dollar cottage industry. So of course you need to shoot that down. Again, that's why in my belief, that's why all these organizations, if you look at a lot of the organizations that throw in, you question, where do they get their money? How do they get their money? Who would they have to share that money with if this narrative was suddenly dug up and they can no longer just say women and children? If they had to share it with places that said men, women, and children, that would change the entire landscape. Remember, here's a fascinating statement. Did you realize that until 2012, that the FBI did not recognize the fact that men, I'm going to use the word ARPed because of this platform, but the FBI did not recognize that could happen. They changed the definition in 2012, but our laws still reflect the fact that when we put together, laws about abuse, again, violence against women, not violence against persons, violence against women. Again, it is an industry built on certain terminology. And that terminology, again, it threatens a lot of money, a lot of power. People will not want to share that. So, of course, they'll throw in with anyone, really. And it is amazing, too. I mean, we'll talk about something else in a minute on that.
This is what Amber carried in her purse for the entire relationship with Johnny Depp.
This such a bad screw up. This is the cosmetic. Now, again, the documentary actually tells you that the video that they put up, pretty much countering because it was an out and out lie. Like, you can hear when she brings this up, she's saying this, not an item like this item, this is what she carried. She used this thing right here. Oh, wait, that isn't, no, that's not what we meant. We meant an item kind of like that, baby. Come on now.
This was what she used. She became very adept at it. You're going to hear the testimony from Amber about how she had to mix the different colors for the different days of the bruises as they developed in the different coloring, and how she would use these to touch those up to be able to cover those.
Is that really her hair, by the way? Is that really, maybe that's mean to say, but is that really her hair? It doesn't, I mean, she either has the word, I mean, her hair does not look real. I don't know. I'm just looking at that now. I'm like, wait a minute. I have flashbacks of just how bad. Again, Elaine, I know that you actually, I make jokes about her not being able to get work, but do you know that in Virginia, she was at some major, a major fundraiser, major lawyers banquet. It had politicians there. In fact, this happened, God, right at the end of last year, maybe the beginning. I'd have to look at the specific dates. But what was crazy about it, she went out and she spoke. She talked about all the blowback, all of the bullying and harassment, and the people that were sharing that saying, oh, listen to what she said. Oh, and we have to think about what's going on here. They were politicians. There were 3 of them. I did a video on that. I found it very disturbing because you had lawyers and lawmakers. They were lawmakers, people, or they used to be lawyers. But they were there. They were being tagged in. They were all sharing this as a narrative. And again, that's scary when you think about it. Because these folks, again, what the message there is that you and I, we can't watch something and judge it for ourselves. We have to have somebody, because you and I, we can't control ourselves. The social media blowback, that wouldn't have been there if you had the arbiters of truth in power. See, remember, anybody, like the media has access to courtrooms. For trials like this stuff, I don't think that you should air family court. Family court is a messed up process, and not just because of the children component, but because any accusation can be levied. I think that there's a line with that. But when we're talking about litigation like this, that's a different beast. Or if people are publicized, like if they're heavily publicized, like if she's weaponizing that, which she did. She went in and weaponized it. So it brought it in because it was part of this. But media, they're there. They're telling you shouldn't be there. Only you and I. And they'll bring up social media in just a second as part of this process too. What's up, Angel? Thank you for the 5 there and the smiley face. Thank you. I always get a laugh out of going back and looking at this. Looks like she's gonna self-choke. She's like, ah. It's like, what is that? Elaine was such a man. If you have not watched, again, we're gonna go through. We'll probably go through one of them I'm thinking this weekend. I want to get it by Sunday at least, but maybe Saturday. I don't think I'll have a live stream tomorrow. But Ian Runkle has started going through the sidebars. And if you thought that, so if you don't know about this, the transcripts to all the trial dropped. And if you're like, well, I watched the trial. Yeah, you didn't get to see the sidebars. You don't know what happened when they went up and talked to the judge. Nobody did. In the courtroom, you have white noise filter, so nobody can actually hear it. And they cut off the volume, when you and I were listening to it. But the transcript caught everything. And some of the stuff that they were involved with is nasty. I mean, Elaine is, she's an absolute mess. I'll point out one thing that they tried to pull in just a minute.
One unexpected big talking point in all of this was the Milani makeup palette, right? Mm-hmm. Amber acknowledged that there was this palette. She said that this was what she used during the time of their relationship. How did you originally find out that makeup palette was in fact not even on the market when Johnny and Amber were still together?
it's a fascinating story. Milani actually came forward and said that they didn't make this exact palette until many years after Amber and Johnny were together. So it's something that spread on social media like a firestorm. And while we definitely learned about it and, you know, couldn't help but notice that that video came out and Milani went on record saying that this palette didn't exist, we didn't feel that it was relevant or admissible evidence that we could bring forward. So that's why we didn't raise it during the trial.
Yeah, see, that's something too, you know, and you can tell the media, I feel like let me switch that. I feel weird. You can tell the media doesn't really have a grasp of everything that went on either, because they'll bring up something. They'll say, hey, you know, X, Y, or Z happened. You're like, yeah, that happened in social media, actually. When they talk about the backlash on social media, that's because people were they were reacting to this stuff, and they were reacting to truths that were coming out all over the place. You were allowed to define testimony in your own way. And it's amazing, this specific trial, this is the one they have a problem with. We could sit all day long and watch court trials, but this specific one, why do they have a problem with it? Like Rolling Stone said, men always win, right? Ah, man. Anyway, Ellen, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships too. Appreciate that. Thank you, Ellen. And author Tim, what's up, Tim? Thanks for the 5. Anyone else think Elaine looks like an Alfred Hitchcock on this image? She does have some of that Hitchcock feature, doesn't she? You know, she looks like if you were going to have AI transpose somebody over, I could see that a bit.
You find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation. Answer, yes.
Now, when you look back sort of holistically at this entire process, is there anything you would have done differently? How do you feel about how everything played out from your end?
No, I mean, I think we did the best job we could for our client. We were over-prepared for this case, and we believed in him, and we believed in his innocence, and we were determined to show that, not just to the jury, but to the public.
You know,
I mean, they won. That was the thing, though. Here's the thing, though, and I saw a good comparison with this. If you would have taken everything that was actually stated, everything that was on record, and you presented that, they won. If we were comparing this, they won from a distance. It was like, you know, a sniper shot. And you could have taken it. Again, this is not going, I mean, you can always go in and say, well, you could have, should have, you know, and again, you win. That's what matters. A lot of the win was unheard, by the way, you know, because her witnesses were unlikable. Everything that they were doing was unlikable. That was on them. But if you wanted to go with, you know, a close up, well, that would have been, I don't know where the opener is. Oh. Yeah, I don't know where it is. Go find that opener. It's somewhere down here. If you find that opener, I'll pop it open for you. Okay. I brought a glass bottle Coke. They brought what it is, like, hey, can you open this? I was like, Denise Clark, what's up? Custom art. Thank you for the 10 gifted memberships, by the way. Thank you, Denise. I thank all of you, too. Like I said, Denise, been here a while. Thank you. You know, again, all of you. I appreciate it. This has been a crazy ride. I figure the ride probably ends at the end of Aquaman. That's the good getting off. I mean, you'll see the crash landing of things here and there, but that's when the career ends. Because you're going to watch that thing fizzle and burn. But anyway, continue.
We talked a little bit about the social media firestorm. There was a lot of venom directed at Amber during this trial. Why do you think that was?
You notice they always use glamour shots, by the way. Isn't that fascinating? And they do this with a lot of people. Like if you look at school teachers that are accused of horrible things. If you look at, I noticed this when somebody was sharing this the other day. If you look at those type of, I'm going to use the word accosters, if they look like they're getting ready for glamour shot photos. If you look at people like Jodi Arias, you know, they used her best photos from back in the day. Again, they used the best. I mean, some of the most heinous monsters out there. They don't present them as they are in the now. They don't present them as they are, even in a courtroom if they're held or in a mugshot or whatever. They present them with glamour shots, and it's a strange thing because they know, really, if they're perceived as pretty, especially Hollywood pretty, people look at it and say, "Oh, well, they couldn't have done that, right?" It's such a
I don't know where it is.
okay. Why don't you go back upstairs? I'm talking about this stuff. Okay. Give me some vibes. If you see it, it may be upstairs. Why don't you look in the drawers? She got a glass bottle of Coke. She's like, open it for me. Heather Bott, thanks for the two there. The pictures are old too. Yeah, that's one of the misleading things as well. I'll have the Herdies. They'll say things about people's ages. They'll compare Depp photos to Heard photos, and they'll use photos of her from when she's in her 20s, and they'll use ones of I mean, you're right at 60. And it's like, man, he's doing great for that, but they'll talk about age. They'll be like, oh, you guys that are talking about that, you're just a bunch of old dudes. And it's like, how old do you think she is again? Because again, there's no insult in that. But at the same time, that person right there is not the person that we've seen. The newer photographs, they don't pass muster. That's what it tells you about all of this stuff. They're not using the ones from Spain. They're not using the ones, that are taken by paparazzi now because they don't fit the right image that they want to convey. Like, I think that's a creepy thing, too. What's up, Dreadnought? Thanks for 10. You're right. The problem with a quote-unquote documentary like this is it's trying to cram years' worth of content into a few hours. Even if they were being unbiased, important content, context, rather, is going to be left out. Yes, that is indeed true. I mean, a lot of context. It took... We looked at this, and again, you don't have to look at it for this long, but to give the background and to really understand the case, I started looking at it, and people looked at it before that. But for myself, I felt that I was knowledgeable on it because I looked at it from 2018. I was privy because of people like Laura B. Jackson and so many other folks. So many. I mean, it's just so many. I feel like I leave out a lot of people, but I felt like I was privy to information that came out because in real time, you would see the fights over it. It would hammer it home. And even then, man, I mean, gosh, some of the information that's been forgotten. And they weaponize a few things, which I want to show you a couple of things from the documentary that they try to weaponize. It's messed up. So Rhea. I love it. Thanks for the vibe. Rewatch the court clip where you were watching yourself being mentioned during Hicksville incident. It's the funniest video ever. It was very weird. That was some surrealistic stuff for sure. I was like, what the heck?
Well, in response to that, I always say that social media and the world was really reacting to the evidence that was being presented in that courtroom. And so I think that the reaction was the barometer for the court of public opinion. The court of public opinion was saying, we don't find her credible. We're not believing these allegations. Even though I think that there was a real desire to believe her, to believe the woman, which is often the case.
That's the thing. That is actually something that is unfortunate in a lot of ways, because it's misused. It's not unfortunate that people want to place their empathy and want to back someone when they say something horrific happened. But this is unlike anything else. If you were like, yo, I was in a car wreck, well, I mean, you can tell a lot of this stuff, but with these type of allegations, again, that brings up the broken system that is just listening to a person and believing what they say. Because at the end of the day, liars are going to lie. And people just, again, we're told that you have to do that. You have to, because otherwise you have no empathy. And like I've said, I work in mental health, and I'm not fucking Amber Heard's therapist. I don't have to be her advocate. If she was just saying something, terrible happened in the past, and that's what she tried to do. Remember, that was the defense they tried to play the empathy game too. They tried to say, well, we never said his name. We never really hammered it down. But remember, they gave a time range 2 years ago, blah, blah, blah. And that hammered it down to exactly who they were talking about. And there's where your problem lies. That is a simple point that the reason a lot of people don't grasp it is because it's so misconstrued. Oh, well, you don't have empathy for victims. And it's like, no, that's not the thing at all. And that's not. But again, so easily misconstrued. What's up, Denise Clark? Thanks for 24 months. Join our content tug. Appreciate your time and dedication to the craziness. Sending love and thanks to your family for sharing it with us. I appreciate that. And it is, I don't know. This is a fascinating trial. Again, right now we're not seeing relitigation. This is what you have to understand, why it's important, this aftermath. I mean, we're over a year in. Why now? And why did all of this clump all together? Again, you had, Depp was like, hey, I'm making a movie. And you have a firestorm of people trying to destroy his career. They ended up actually, in my opinion, that's where L'Oreal finally was like, I'm going to walk away from this because this is absolutely insane. But you look at you have that, you have a quote unquote, the letter for Amber Heard. You had a second one come out targeting where he is, targeting where his movie's being released. In the only areas that's being released, they're targeting those. Then, of course, you have all of the stuff that went on with the film festival. You have specific outlets that link up. You have all the narratives that came out that are very much 100% PR. They are. Again, that's not conspiracy. You have all of this. It's pushed. Like I said, on a long enough timeline, they figure people will not remember. And they will be able to relitigate to a society that, and you think this is ingrained in your mind. Yeah, there are a lot of other cases that, again, OJ, like how many people remember that? A long enough timeline, people do get to relitigate. And I believe that they also are hoping and praying for something horrible to happen to JD. So he can't actually, he can't defend himself. He'll have advocates out there, but if you only have one person speaking, that'd make it even easier for him, right? Continue.
But I think we were able to establish and show that people shouldn't be guilty by accusation.
Now, so many people followed this trial in real time. And now we've got this docuseries. Time has passed. The dust has settled somewhat, arguably. What do you hope that people expect that people...
That's a statement there. Again, that is a statement about time and the passage of time. The dust has settled. So they're saying, again, that's the framework for... Let me get off that image there. It's too bright. That's the framework, though. Well, we moved far enough away so we can look at this with a more rational mindset. That's being gamed right there. You're fucking being gamed. Again, it allows anybody to put in, this is something you yourself watch, but they're telling you your reaction to this, your visceral reaction to somebody lying to you, just the things that they did there, trying to burn someone's life down, that was unreasonable. That's the entire point. And they made it clear in interviews. Emma Cooper made it clear when she put this together that the idea, she didn't talk about expert testimony. She didn't really go in. She said, I'm not trying to relitigate, even though, yeah, she kind of does in some points. But the point is to point the finger at people like yourselves, people like myself, anybody with a microphone, especially, to say those people right there, they're the villains in the story. Why? Because they can't relitigate the case anymore. Everyone saw it. So they're saying, these people here, these aren't the arbiters of truth. We need to return to the old system, baby. And they make a huge mistake in there, because they want to see it through that lens. Like me, you can listen to my opinion, but I'm not an arbiter of truth. You are. You got to watch the damn thing live. You get to go through the court documents, and you can disagree on any of it. There were plenty, again, lawyers that said, hey, they did want to believe her. There were many of them that wanted to believe her. And even if they didn't think that Depp could win the case. So it's a flawed argument from the start at best, but I think it's a deceptive one that they try to pass on. But continuing.
Away from this docuseries, from what you've seen?
From what I've seen, I think, and I hope that people take away the fact that the social media firestorm that took place was reacting to the evidence that was happening in real time during that trial.
That is exactly it, too. It is reactive. It's not just something that happened in the moment. And again, they don't want you to look over a broad timeline either. Another poison to this documentary series is they don't want to go back to when the article dropped. They never go back that far because they only cover the trial. Forget the information that comes up for trial to prime all of that. The reaction people had in the moment when the op-ed was dropped. Remember, that weaponized Warner Brothers. It weaponized Aquaman. It weaponized Twitter. It weaponized other portions of social media. And it was effective. It was effective because the media and everything else, they didn't just report on it. They jumped in. And tens of thousands of people were like, yeah, this guy, he needs to go. That's why he lost it. It wasn't that Disney just woke up one day and they were like, hey, we're going to take everything away. Hell no. It's because you had active letter writing campaigns. This was orchestrated in the depths of Me Too. And none of that's talked about. They act like people just wanted to villainize her. And no, they didn't. They did want to believe her. And it took a lot of evidence. And that is not justice, by the way. It is not fucking justice for a person to have to go out and to prove that they are innocent. You're supposed to prove that they're guilty, but that's not how it works. Unfortunately, that is the thing that should be corrective. And this trial did fuck all for that, by the way. You would hope it would. It brought up a conversation. You can reflect back to it, but on a long enough timeline too, people, again, they have the mindset of gnats. They have that attention span, and they don't remember the lesson with that. They go in and they crucify the next person and the next person, and it never stops. It never, ever stops. Nasty business. What's up, Amanda? Thanks for 10. I got me a Johnny in the Vamps, Bethel, New York. Greatest experience of my life. That's awesome. He was so kind and genuine, happy to see me and everyone. And we're the same height. That's cool. Hello, glad I got the chance. Yeah, it's good that people got to go out and to do that as well. It's good that opportunity. I'm glad that people, they didn't have to rely, like, another thing that media companies, they can try to convince you of is that maybe your mindset is wrong. Maybe you saw it wrong because they control narratives. I've seen that with industry products. And remember, Hollywood, in Hollywood, the products aren't just movies, they're people. And they frame reference around that product too. And if they control that narrative, again, they tell you exactly what's there. So I'm glad that you had a tour where you could actually gauge people's reaction. You could see crowds. Because when you have a movie with a limited release, they can talk about it in a specific way. When you're finding out contracts from places, though, you're finding out about $20 million made from an advertiser here. You're talking about movies, multiple, by the way. There's another thing I'll cover tomorrow that I think really plays into that, actually shed some light on that. But anyway, there's only a few seconds left. Let's get this out of here.
And that's what the public was reacting to. It was real evidence, admissible evidence that was taking place in those four walls in that courtroom.
Yeah, and again, the public, a lot of the public watched it all. They watched every piece of it. Now, I want to show you something that was weaponized a lot. And I think Laura B did a very good job of pointing this out. This actually came up in the docu-series. They bring up the things that were left out. You know, the Stephen Deuter stuff. And as Laura B points out, the end on Stephen's text with lawyer commentators repeatedly saying the judge ruled them irrelevant, that didn't happen. The judge did not rule them irrelevant. The transcripts, if you look at this kind of stuff, show that they were ruled hearsay unless, here's a huge distinction in this, unless they call him as a witness. That's what these transcripts, you can see it. I mean, it's clear as day. They were saying you can't introduce this stuff unless you allow him. You call that man as a witness and you allow him to say something on this matter. They leave all of that out. They make this the fault of a judge. And again, that's the fault of Elaine and crew. They didn't want to call Stephen Deuters. Why? Because he had a lot of stuff to say, and they were afraid of what he would say. Like they treat this like it's some kind of smoking gun that the judge was like, no. We couldn't allow that stuff in. Oh, yeah, you could have very much allowed it in, but he was allowed to speak on the matter. They didn't want that. So they need to stop twisting this. I mean, that is a huge part of it. Rachel, thanks for the 9 months. Love your content. Bedtime Stories, UK. A year later, I can't believe how much has happened. I know, it's weird. Like, you would think the trial would just end, right? And most of them do. Like, we have watched some heinous monsters go on trial. Nobody has the audacity. This goes to... It's the same reason that everything happened the way it did. Again, the media lockdown, everything else, because at the end of the day, it's the promotion of more than a trial. You can tell it. You would never have this. You may have a PR team trying to galvanize some support, but media compliance, especially specific shill media, looking at you, Penske Media, by the way, calling you straight out there. Yeah, you can tell. What's up, Sandra D, by the way? Thank you for 5 gifted memberships. That's awesome. Thank you all, by the way. Like I said, thank you. I love the membership thing. I think that is the coolest feature that YouTube has. But if you look at this, you'll see, again, it's questioning the exhibits, and they were allowed to bring Deuters in. When you ask that question, you have to ask, if that was, again, this smoking gun, as it were, why wouldn't they allow it? Why wouldn't they bring that person in? And again, the answer is because they would have blown that narrative out of the water. They decided that they would leak that narrative to the media. That was their whole intention there. You could tell in the aftermath. They had already set up a narrative when to say, oh, these are the reasons why we lost. You think about it. We wouldn't allow stuff like this, and they wouldn't allow the therapy notes. That's their entire narrative. Well, we could have won if you just got to make up all random shit, just like you do on social media. Yeah, maybe you could have won. Right? Psychological projectionist, thanks to 10. I don't understand how they can ask what the difference is between pledged and donated. I mean, they got dictionaries indeed. The real answer is $7 million plus in interest. Again, if you look at you're totally correct on that. If you look at the interviews, when people are asking about that, and they're like, you gave it all away? And she's like, yeah, I donated everything. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but it's transparent what she's trying to say. But again, in the aftermath, they knew what the problems would be too. The Sun case worked as a way to look at it. Remember, here's another thing that people forget, and they don't really bring up in documentaries either. The text messages that you saw Depp sending to friends and more, things that they're not consequential. They don't really matter in all of that. In the aftermath, you get accused of some horrible shit. You have a contentious divorce. You're probably going to say some horrible things about somebody. And you're joking around with your friend. Who knows what you say about somebody? You could have an argument, just having a bad day, whatever. You're joking around with other people. Who knows what you would say? Those things, though, everything was turned over accidentally by his team in the UK. So every text message that he had for like a decade, it was all out there. And that's all they could find. They could find no proof, no smoking gun evidence. And they had everything. Now, Depp didn't have that luxury on the other side of that. They had some messages back and forth, things like the mom coming in and saying, well, yeah, she's wild and this, you have to ignore her temper. They had their smoking gun didn't exist. And if you get 10 years of stuff, you shouldn't have to go in and say, well, I'm going to break this down and I'm going to tell you this is what the words really mean. Oh, she hit the wall. Oh, that's actually that's not about age. No, that's actually talking about a literal wall. Again, they had to take things and they had to warp them because otherwise none of it works. And what's up? Google showing me this trial was, quote, remember, none of us were there. We decided who we believed, but never forget that we weren't there. After a while, though, here's the thing. We are there for some of it. Some of it. Like we're there when narratives aren't always going to match up. Like in the moment, you forget so many items, but some of the stuff, like they said, oh, the police walked around, they did all of this search and everything. And then you find out, well, there's body cam footage and the police never did any of that at all. They never agreed. They never said that there were injuries when timelines don't match up. They're like, oh, we took photographs of X, Y, and Z. And then when you look at the clocks in elevators and the clocks in lobbies, they're about 5 minutes off from their time frame. They don't really realize that because you have a discrepancy there. So, there's so many things that we were privy to, things that didn't match up. Like we weren't there for the accusation, what supposedly happened before the James Corden show, about busted lip, broken nose, orbital shattered, all of that stuff. But we were witness to the aftermath, the direct aftermath. The day there. And they're like, well, makeup covers up everything. It covers up a broken nose, swollen lips, and it doesn't. Yeah, you can go in and conceal certain things, but all of that, you don't have to squint and try it. You're like, oh man, those blurry pixels there. Maybe that's that, So we weren't there for all of it. We were there for some though, for sure. But yeah, they like to weaponize that for sure. And you're right. You're very right. That's something they brought up over and over again. They would ask witnesses, but you weren't really there, were you? You're totally right. Sandra D, thanks for the 5 there. That's cute. I like the super sticker. I like some of the super stickers. I think they're funny. Let me see. Did I miss anybody? 1 second. Just making sure I didn't miss anybody. Sandra D. I don't know why I did that. Okay, let me show you one other thing here too. So there were, now we actually had, if you didn't want to watch this, you have a breakdown. I like this breakdown too, because it gives you a feel for it without having to go in and watch. We have the Chris Boozy collector. we have a really good narrative on, what's new this week. Okay, so you have your 3 breakdown, your 3 slices, the truth on trial, breaking the internet, and the viral verdict. That's the way it's named there. You can see, with the world watching, the trial begins. Amber and Johnny revisit the start of the relationship and the events that soured it as public interest in the trial escalates to a fever pitch. Misinformation. So you see, again, this is the problem. Like these assholes, they go in and they tell you, well, we're not really trying to relitigate that. No, they're trying to say that, yeah, you promoted misinformation online. You promoted, look at all this stuff here. I mean, it's nuts. The word itself, it's pointing the finger. Inevitably, I knew that they would blame a lot of folks. It's just fascinating how they have trouble aiming at Depp. So they figure the softer targets are, well, the internet. Those people out there, they're the bad guys. And that's become the major narrative to it, you know? Because they're talking about people that come in, like DUI guy. Said, DUI guy made an appearance 3 minutes in there. I think they're going for the juggler on LawTube. By the way, how do you bypass screen recording restrictions on Netflix? Somebody asked you. You can. There's places. Let's just say there's the open seas. That's the way to do it. Capturing the hysteria around the trial. The JD fans, they made sure to show fans in Jack Sparrow costumes. Yes, that is true. When they talked about hysteria, the craziness, they would point at the crowds. They didn't point out the nut jobs putting out flyers and basically trying to get the jury to either have a mistrial or to get the jury to side with them. They don't point that out. They're just like, oh, look, there's a guy dressed up like him. Again, they try to make it look like it's a carnival sideshow. And it's a little bit bigger than that. You know what I mean? They also emphasize over and over again the idea of clicks and views. They're like, oh, all these people who wouldn't normally talk about this stuff, they suddenly started engaging because look at how many clicks. First of all, that is the reality for anything. Anything on the internet that is big, you're going to have people cover. You're going to have more coverage on that. But again, with a trial, this was, if you would have had, could you imagine if you would have had the OJ trial in the modern era? Because, I remember the OJ trial. I remember how that played out. And the way it did, it was a firestorm anyhow. Could you imagine it then? This, it's not the same type of trial, obviously, but it's comparison to the media frenzy. The media caused a lot of that too, and the media, they caused it not just in their push, but also in their silence. That caused a lot of it as well. Heather, thanks for the 2 there. All that pesky, precise evidence. I know, man, all that evidence. Oh my God. How dare it get in the way? Amanda thinks of 5. Strange how scammers cultists don't want the law to apply to her, but expect it to apply to someone who isn't even guilty. Coincidence? Methinks not. No, of course. I mean, that's the thing. You would think when you watch these things, that, again, if you watch these documentaries or you read any of this stuff, who do you feel like won? Because when I read about this, the pesky little problem that they have is they already decided what their narratives would be, but their narrative was decided on a fault. That fault was that she would win. So they still write like she won. And she didn't win in any front. They try, though. So we had Ricada Law, myself, Emily D. Baker. Everybody makes an appearance 5 minutes in, of course. Of course, that happens. They also, this is a good point, too. The intense music. It compares it to a playoff elimination game. And it was like that. I mean, you could tell they added a lot for dramatic effect. They were trying to build up this idea, and they throw in things like, why is there so much crazy access to everyone? I mean, it's nuts. Also, so interestingly enough, we just found this out. That Star Wars girl. So there are, they talk about reporters at the beginning. One of those quote unquote reporters is that Star Wars girl. Drink that in. one of the random reporter 2, I think it is. Go back. If you go back and listen to that, go and listen to Anna, that Star Wars girl. That's her. She's the one who caught that. She was like, oh my God, that's me. So they're trying to make it sound like, the people that were talking about this were some mainstream. No, they just went in and they took some freaking audio from that Star Wars girl and shoved her in, apparently, too. Didn't credit her at all. Nothing. I mean, they just took it and they just said reporter 2, I think it was. Oh, it's so weird. But I mean, they put in a lot of people. They brought up Megapint, the idea of memeing. And I thought that was interesting because of the reaction, the reaction to it. Again, it shows you, yes, the public, when they saw that, they felt that Depp's story, he was humanized in it. They brought out their guns. You would think in this situation, when you have a female accuser going in and telling this harrowing story they've made up, obviously, but when they do, that's typically going to make people fall on their side. You see it with plenty of cases out there. You'll have an accuser, and that's all it takes. It takes a story. It takes somebody telling it. But in this instance, people did not side with it. And they try to make it sound like, well, that's because of social media misleading you and misinformation. And of course, oh, he's this huge star. Nah, anybody can be hobbled. The biggest names can be hobbled. Harvey Weinstein, of course. I mean, look at what hobbled him. People believed his accusers. And there was more evidence too. I want to make that clear. There was evidence of him around secretaries. I mean, just meaty hands. Oh, it's just gross. Darth News, though, came in. He was featured a lot. They wanted to make him a villain because he wears a mask. They wanted to make him look crazy. Like me, I'm not a person with a mask on. I'm just a cartoon character. So it's a little bit harder to really throw that. And I'll monetize them. I think a lot of them are scared too because, there's some people, they felt like they could make Darth look crazy. I hope, like, his responses to this stuff, I hope it helps him grow his channel big time. I do. I hope people tune in and they're like, hey, what's up with that? Because, I mean, he looks good on there. He sounds good. He does his homework. But they try to make him look like a villain because, of course, he has on a mask. Why do you have on a mask? Oh, he's a bad guy. No, he's protecting identity. It's not just a character. People do that stuff because they know the craziness. They know people like Emma Cooper will put a bullseye on you and try to destroy your life when you were right about a case. They still try to frame you as a bad guy. Heather Bott, thanks for the 2. All hail the mighty Megapint. Indeed. God, there's so many pieces in there. They're just crazy. And what's up? Thanks for the second super chat. Wait, understood. Netflix took blue pill, not red. Hope you get the Matrix analogy. Yeah, I do indeed. You're right there. They chose to rewrite illusion, not see. They are in it. Yeah, well, this was intentionally done. Emma Cooper, go and look at the other framework. Look at how it comes together. The type of sloppy journalism, quote unquote journalism. I guess that's part of the kicker with documentaries. You want to make it have zest and flavor, but you don't really want it to tell the entire story. You narrate it. You're not putting together something. They accuse us of bias, right? My bias showed you the entire case. So they can claim that I made up my mind after I looked through it X amount of times. And I saw a lot of framework didn't work in or this or that. They just go in and they're like, oh, everyone here. And they don't know particulars of the case. You can tell. They know some of the overview, some of the overarching themes, but some of the stuff they just flat out lie or get wrong. And it's crazy. Thanks for the 20. I really like your laugh. Thank you. Make sure you keep us informed. Karma will get her. She's just evil. Yeah, she's actually, in my opinion, she's obsessed. Somebody walks away from somebody with that personality type, you don't walk away. That's why, again, in 2018, right before the hit piece comes out, she's trying to wish him a happy birthday, trying to get a hold of him, saying that he was her one true love. He's the one that walked away from her. Otherwise, everyone else she walked away from. But him, he was like, no. So, I mean, she could frame it or reference it a certain way, but you look at the evidence. He was like, no, I'm tired of this. Enough. And it exposes her lie. But, I mean, that's obsession. That's a Fatal Attraction, the movie. That's somebody that will boil your bunny. It's a cross-examination, commentary. Emily D. Baker. Yeah, Emily D. Baker's fun to watch, by the way. I like Emily D. Baker. Darth News. They put him in a lot. They also put in Andy Signor. I mean, he came up a lot in there, Part 2, breaking the internet, dramatic opening, views. Of course, they got to go through that. Narrator, concerns of misinformation on TikTok. TikTok tried it. It's like, no, people took segments or slices and then they commented on them. Cat Tin Barge, of course, pops up later. They show the Australian property where they're both staying, old interviews of Amber, Bahamas, the wedding. They missequence, of course. Amber crying, memes of Amber crying, TikTok. They're making memes. They're so mean. I mean, that's pretty much the whole thing. Then we get our TMZ guy, the brutal smackdown of Elaine. That was really funny. TMZ, they get exposed. Yeah, well, the whole thing with TMZ and how they arrive there, all of that gets exposed there. DUI guy with his, his, soon run a world. Mainstream media coverage was thrown in because they're supposed to, again, they balance them. You're supposed to be the hypocritical monster because we're not, quote unquote, journalists. I wouldn't want to be a fucking scumbag journalist, by the way. There's a handful of journalists I respect, and I have to be very careful about that because, again, like Andrew Gold seems like good people, wants to do research, get to the bottom of stuff. There's you a journalist. You have other journalists that work here and there. But by and large, the industry is compacted with more tabloid style. They're more TMZ than, breaking actual journalistic stories. You can tell that too. They throw fits. Like I said, I've done how many videos on this stuff and they throw fits about it. I'm like, well, that's a catalog of how many years I've covered this shit. Deep dive, man. The deepest dive I could do. And I'm watching the aftermath. I'm watching the fallout. I'm watching them spin. And they're like, no, you can't do that. You have to do it in just a handful of months. If you don't do that, then you're the monster. And it's like, I remember when supposed journalism, it was supposed to be investigative. You spent time, real time. You have JD's sister's testimony brought in. JD's testimony centering on his upbringing and addiction. You get a Camille interview, Rottenberg showing JD taking naps, lots of pro Johnny TikTok. I mean, it kills me. There are pictures of Amber Heard passed out on planes and stuff too. You don't have any of that ever came up. But you have, like I said, there's a bunch of people that come up in there. Quite a few people that are brought up. And then Cat Tin Barge, of course, Cat Tin Barge, you got to remember the thing about Cat Tin Barge too. Cat Tin Barge leveraged this trial. These people complain about monetization. She went from a unpaid intern to somebody that scored a job off of this because she buzzwords a lot. She's a failed YouTuber, a failed fucking ASMR YouTuber. Here's ASMR if you don't know. Do you find my whispering and me scratching the microphone? Do you find that attractive? There you go, ASMR, baby. Yeah. But Cat Tin Barge is like, there were These creators were getting hundreds of views before. During the trial, they were pumping out videos, pro-JD videos, getting crazy views because who wants to see pro-Amber videos? I mean, you could tell statements like that, fucking hit pieces. And you had the director too say, well, we had a lot of trouble finding any pro-Amber Heard voices. Now, there were voices out there in the trial. It's just that the world pretty much agreed that this person was a lying piece of garbage, you know? Cat Timbers. I couldn't find one pro-Amber TikTok creator told me if they spoke positively about Amber, they got dogpiled. Dog peeled. It's a funny typo. They got dog peeled. The whole platform was pro JD. Amber Heard supporters were abused. You know, that kills me too. So I saw a quote from Chris Boozy just a couple of days ago saying, oh, you know, if I take quotes from you or quotes from your YouTube and I put them out there and I talk trash about them, that's not harassment. And it's like, wait the fuck a minute. So you can comment on social media and you can say whatever. Nobody can fucking respond to that. That's abuse. But it's only abuse when? Nah. You want to say something. See, the thing none of these things tell you either. I've shown like some of the craziness over time that has been thrown. And not just at me. There have been many people that have had this thrown at them. I mean, again, 2 days before the trial, this thing came up. There was a list of 60 YouTubers, I believe it was, or YouTubers and TikTokers and other folks like celebrity, whatever they could throw in, people they wanted to take aim at. But the things that they threw on there were just insane allegations, life ruination tactics. The stuff that these people did, that's abuse. But fuck, man, just telling these people they're wrong or shut up, you know, or whatever. People are not obligated to nicety. They can talk all the smack they want, but you know, there's a difference. The threats, the lies, you know, again, calling you a child playground enthusiast, let's say. You know, that's supposed to ruin your life. Then, of course, they put in the Milani cosmetics. Instead of focusing on that lie, they were focused on one TikTok creator who showed up with proof to Fairfax County, implying that outside people were influencing the trial. That actually came up quite a bit. You saw that, you know, they were trying to make it sound like the outside. It actually focused. It actually, you know, influenced again. Oh, the jury, they couldn't have ignored that and more. Lots of brooding music. You had the pledge brought in, you know, oh, pledge and donate. Instead of focusing on the lie, they were showing the reenactment of TikTok and folks calling out her outrageous lies. Then they show pro-Amber, like some of the fucking craziest pro-Amber Heard people out there. They're like, we're going to show them to really validate the use of pledge or stuff. Everybody, that is some disingenuous bullshit. And they know it. They know it. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Clips of the judge saying, hey, to the jurors, don't look at social media. Again, they're you know, the subtext to that is saying that the jurors did do that. There's no proof whatsoever. The only people that said shit like that, by the way, we had a certain book come out from Nick Wallace. Yeah, remember that? It was like, hey, you know, somebody told me that there was someone that looked up. There's no proof that ever happened. That's the misinformation, and it continues to carry on. Now, part 3, Piers Morgan. I don't know who to believe. You know, I'm sure you saw that if you saw the beginning. Then they have Andy Signor. Andy Signor, you know, saying, oh, man, this woman's a psychopath. And they used a lot of Andy Signor in there. And again, Popcorn Blunt was not credited. They didn't give permission. I don't give permission for anything. Like, again, people, I understand why people do this stuff, right? I get it. They want exposure. Yeah, but here's my problem with it, okay? And again, this is not aimed at anyone. This is just my mindset on it. I'm telling you that the mainstream, are part of the problem. If I'm going to them for exposure, we're not creating a new thing. We're not creating an alternative. We are relying on them to bring more people to us. And yes, that can work to grow your audience, but at what cost? Because fuck those people. The truth brings people. You don't need a Warner Brothers Discovery or a Netflix or a fucking New York Times or a CNN or a Fox News. You don't need them. It's good that they stand up because they're going to reach the people that are not in social media. But at the end of the day, if you become loud enough, if you amplify the truth enough, people find you anyway. Staircase incident, of course. She's the only person to witness the assault. They went into that again. They don't take apart Heard. They don't take her apart for some of that. Let me pull up a couple more things here. It just ended right there. Give me 1 second. But they don't take her apart for, they always bring up when they bring up Kate Moss, they bring it up as like, oh, well, she just brought up something that was a rumor that was readily available. She knew what she was doing there. She played that in. See, people tried to course correct that in a prior trial, but she decided it worked well enough for her in this one. Why not go back to it again? That's why Kate Moss was already on standby. That's why Depp and his team looked like they had won an award, because they knew that she would try to load that up. But they don't tell you anything like that. They're not gonna. They show it. They show how viral it goes, but they don't give you context. They don't bring in expert witnesses or anything. Again, this was a hit piece. This is how you tell that this was made into a hit piece. There are a lot of hit pieces out there, by the way. We've seen. I've seen a couple of YouTube series that were made that weren't biased. But as far as mainstream ones, I feel like, well, you got to think about this. What is a Warner Brothers Discovery going to allow? Are they going to allow something that is non-biased? Or are they going to go out and try to course correct the thing that if it works, maybe it'll salvage that $200 million plus movie that they have sitting on a shelf that's supposed to come up in December? What do you think they're going to do? And the same thing is with a Netflix or anything else. What do you think that they're going to do? They're afraid of backlash. They think, and it's not just it's backlash from their own ranks, because they are the problem. If they know that this is a mistruth, if they know it's a lie, they don't do anything to course correct it. So, thanks for the 13 months. They try to make out out like JD paid Andy to try and sour a personal moment. JD didn't pay for his visit to Vegas. No, they paid out of pocket to go there. That was something that it was not supplied by Depp. They do that to anything. That again, that's been one of the major narratives. Like for myself, like when they talk about Adam Waldman, they're like, oh my God, he didn't diss or misinformation. It's like, no, he had some phone calls. He answered questions. That's what you're supposed to do, right? I thought that was supposed to be what journalism looked like. Again, Rolling Stone, the same places that hype this thing up. They'll put out an article with like 23. I really think, and I've said this before, I think the problem that you have with all of this is some of us try to hunt down sources. And these places, they just make them up. I think they just fabricate this shit. And they're like, oh my God, these people really did talk to people. We're not supposed to do that. What's happening here? I really think that's the thing there. Those things were too. They failed to prove Depp's scissor fingers too. I don't know. I think really, I think he has. I think after the accident, I think he does have a detachable hand. I think it was worse, and I think he really does have scissor fingers. That's what I was led to believe. Anyway, so the staircase incident, you have memes brought up. The one with Rottenborn. I love it. I love the fact that they include things that you're like, well, that's funny. They include them because they want to take shots. But old footage of JD and Kate Moss. They have the testimony there. Jurors might have tuned out because she's not credible, as if she was credible initially. Yeah, they brought that up too. They made it sound like over time, maybe people found her not credible. But from go, you could tell that there was something wrong there. She was acting. That's what people felt like. You know, they threw a lot of hate at Darth News for saying that. But that's what people felt like. They have Don Hughes and Shannon Curry's testimony side by side. I mean, that when you look at Don Hughes, like Don Hughes, one thing they don't get across, if you play all of her statements, you can tell she hates men. Like Shannon Curry came across as likable. Don Hughes, that's part of an expert. Like they had the most unlikable expert. So of course they left them out pretty much. They didn't bring up all of what they were saying or anything, because of course, if you brought that in, that might actually frame things in a way that explains how you lose too. I mean, they lost on every front, and they don't want to say that. Amanda, thanks for the 10. Amber was a stripper and an escort before she became an actress, and she was a suspect in the death of her best friend when she was 16. It's funny how they never mention by her cult. Well, the only thing that's ever mentioned as background, ever, anything, would be the idea that she was altruistic when she was younger. That's the only thing that they want to say. And it's like, yeah, okay. She did charity work. Remember how they brought that up in the trial? But they give you, the subtext to it. Amber Heard's face is shown. Almost depressed listening to the diagnosis with sad music. They try to make you feel bad for her when things come up. Because they say, well, we're not relitigating, but they are. They are. Franco, you're going to point out the Depp jealousy. Amber, he hated Franco. Sad music with Depp shaking his head. There's no mention of the lift incident. So you know that footage on the elevator? Yeah. None of that came in? Don't you find that weird? Because that annihilates part of a narrative too. The idea, I mean, she was having guys over, and she said, Franco, like, this didn't come into the trial, but she said, well, Franco, he was always supposed to be her witness, because remember in 2016, he didn't have that shadow of, I'm just going to call it controversy, right? He didn't have that shadow hanging over him. So she was saying, well, you could see him on the elevator. He's like looking at my face and examining it. And no, no, that's not what you see in that at all. Depp's second cross-examination, Rottenborn asking Depp his habit of communicating via Stephen Deuters. Deuters never testified with dramatic music. That's what I was talking about before. Followed by ominous music. Rottenborn requested to submit additional text. These messages were not allowed. So they were the implication to all of that was, again, that they couldn't allow the Stephen Deuters text. And again, they could, but only if Stephen Deuters was called as a witness. That was the catch. Like, again, you have to ask, why wouldn't they do that? They had all these implications. Colonel Kurtz was on there too. Props to Colonel Kurtz. Does a great job with stuff. But I mean, again, you have a podcast saying Depp is a terrific actor. He seduced us without moving. Next clip, another podcast. Oh, he's a terrific actor, but I happen to believe he's a violent lover. I mean, again, you see the framework to it. They bring in Paul Bettany. You have Rottenborn, of course, bringing that in. You have the Bettany texts. And again, you've got to remember the context that they never bring to that is they had access to every single text message Johnny Depp sent. Everyone. I mean, I don't know how to hammer that better. Every single one. So what you saw on display there, that was all they had. So when he's talking to Fred, they don't have any proof of anything actually happening to her. Like that, I think that should be hammered even more. Because as far as somebody opening themselves up for examination, like could you imagine if somebody got to examine every fucking thing that you said to anyone over the last 10 years? Could you imagine some of the things that you've probably said? You know, whether you're mad, when you had a bad day. Could you imagine any of the stuff you've ever said there? And that's all they could find to weaponize. At closing statements, they only show Rottenborn and Camille, by the way. No Elaine, of course, because Elaine was batshit crazy. Next, they bring up, the judge, final instructions. They have Depp. They show him, he's rocking that stage. They talk about justice for Johnny Depp. They bring up the idea again. They don't bring up, they bring up 20 million or 20 billion views on TikTok for justice with Johnny Depp, with the majority siding with Depp. Now, when they bring up the pro heart, she had million. Now there were millions of hits for her. So, of course, you're gonna have botting on that, but still, you have crazy people. They were there. It's just that the world overwhelmingly drowned them out in this instance. Typically, they have the microphone. They are the loudest people out there. They hijack everything. They have the microphone to destroy everyone. In this instance, they didn't. And man, they hate that. They hate it so freaking much. Psychological projectionists, thanks for the 5. What about all the evidence JD couldn't present? The Australian transcript, audio, most of Jennifer Howell's. Well, that's indeed true. They just ignore all of that. The Jennifer Howell thing, Jennifer Howell, they don't want to talk about her because she's inconsequential to them. Why? Because she's damaging. She's not really inconsequential at all. They try to play her off that way, though. They try to play her off as, angry and this. But again, all of that flies in the fact of believe women. Believe. Remember, there's a word in between that. Remember that little word between believe and women? All. But you can't believe all. I mean, if they're sitting on different sides of that, how does that work? See, the idea of that doesn't even work, especially if two parties are claiming abuse and they're pointing at one another. They're saying, hey, this person stole my story of this horrible thing. They were a monster. They treated me like garbage. They did all these horrible things to me. Can't believe them. Why? Well, they're talking about Amber Heard. Again, it just doesn't work. It never works there. But again, you got to play a narrative somehow, right? Lulu's mom, thanks for 5. The whole or down and drown the witch things from Monty Python. Talk about things taken out of context. Of course, Of course. I mean, context, though. The context to that, they just found something that they thought they could frame in a specific way. Again, the best framework. There were 2 statements in that trial I'm sure most people remember. The one where Johnny Depp was like, I could do other things to your throat. And he was like, ooh, that proves abuse. And it's like, yeah, I think that proves something else they're talking about, Rottenborn. The whole world was like, like that. It's like, are you kidding me? When that was funny. That was really funny. But that shows you how they warp things. And again, Amber hit the wall hard. And they were like, oh, that proves abuse. And it's like, no, it's talking about looks. It's talking about her, aging out. That Hollywood thing. And beyond that. It's an insult. Verdict day, Pro-Depp crowd, oh my gosh, a frenzy. They pick up one dummy who says Depp could lose this case worse. He may have to pay Amber. They get Andre Burkhart. That's good too. Actual verdict with her. Throw in fist pumps. Ah, yes, hell yes, she says. Different creators are shown. There's a lot of that too. They try to, frame it up. They move to CNN, where one woman, a quote unquote expert, says this is another win for powerful men. Again, men always win. If Amber would have won, none of them would have ever batted an eye. They would have just applauded and they would have tried to ruin people. There was another one that said, oh, this is humiliation ritual. They do all of that while they're showing, clips of people celebrating. Then Cat 10 Barge pops up. This is backlash to me too, says one expert sitting next to Cat while she nods enthusiastically. He's like, oh, moving on. I love the notes here. It's kind of fun. Elaine Benchu, Camille interviews after the trial. They pick out one TikTok where a guy says that Elaine is very articulate and competent, but she was portrayed negatively. And so, I mean, I see complaints all the time. Like, oh my God, that umbrella guy. Oh, look what he does. Well, who spotlighted me? Them. They did. Rottenborn and Elaine. And really, it shows you the Amber Heard side of things. They paid attention to all of us. They were listening. They were watching us. It's funny. Before that trial, like so many people were like, man, that's just conspiracy. It's just, that's all in your head, Tug. I'm like, no, man, I know this is true. I know legitly, like they're doing it. I've heard stuff where their lawyers have made contact with places like YouTube and they want to shut us all down. I mean, it's real. It's real. It's very real. It's not conjecture, it's not delusion. And it's like, bam, they proved it all. And they pointed there. Followed by Andy Signor meeting with Depp. And again, with that, the implication, I mean, they try to imply it like Depp is having people, he's rewarding people. And that's nuts. They went, they met him, they had a meet and greet session. It was recorded, and they try to spin that moment into something so nasty. And props like Laura B was there. I mean, again, Laura B's another person that they're throwing in with that. Mockery of AH's post-interview. They show a lot of that. Then they have the unsealed documents. Andrea Burkhart makes the entry. Who is a YouTube commentator? You could tell they didn't like anybody. It's funny though. That's one of the big spin points too. And this should be a point that says you want all the information that's out there. People got together, they raised money, they wanted to see what the unsealed documents were, and they're like, oh, they own themselves. Actually, there were a lot of things that talked about her that were so bad, but they found things that they could insult Depp with, like medical. They used his medical stuff against him, which is nasty business. But that was one of the things that they did in the aftermath. The media did, by the way. They tried to fuel it into, oh, well, this is a cause for abuse. And, again, it's just conjecture and fantasy. And they were also like, well, Depp, they wanted to put in a photograph of Heard here because of X, Y, or Z. I mean, again, it's so nasty. Then they talk about a lot about the stuff that wasn't allowed. And the documentary, they end with a line. They talk about them both being abusive, mutual abuse. And it's such garbage. I'm not saying that people can't be abusive in a relationship like that. But when you look at it, a guy that's running away and trying to hide from somebody, that's leaving places and someone's chasing them down, doing horrible things. Yeah. They take words. When people heap abuse on you and they heap abuse on you, you're going to blow up after a while. You're going to say a lot of nasty things. And they act like in that moment, you're not allowed to, Because if you have any reaction, if you're human at all, that will be weaponized. Even if you're not, it'll be weaponized. There'll always be a reason. There will always be. But that's the way that they frame this stuff. And again, it's a lot worse. If you think that breakdown is bad, it's much worse than that. It's much, much worse than that. I thought about going on Rumble and going through the thing. Not tonight, but I thought about doing that. Just going on and watching it. I'm sure it'll get a takedown notice, but I'll review it on Rumble. Fuck it. I won't get suspended for it. So I'll go through it. I'll go through the whole damn thing. I'll sit on there and show it. I mean, it kills me. Again, they use, see what makes me, infuriates me about this stuff. In the aftermath, like Andy, for example. Andy's been talking lawsuit, He was talking, how unfair this stuff was, how messed up it is. And here's the reality to that. And again, like, he's not the only one. I got hit for going over stuff with my image in it. But again, they're claiming copyright. They're hitting our stuff. Like, this is the same thing. Like my video where I go over quite a few things, but I go over that intro, which is just chock full of things that they took and that they were not theirs. They had no right to it. They copyright claim and they start hitting people for. And again, like Signor is saying, look, this is his own footage that they're claiming. Like, he's showing his own footage to it. And you have that. But Warner, like I said, Warner Brothers Discovery, they pulled the same damn thing. Netflix, though, is being a little nastier about it. And Warner, actually, for their part, they fought back and forth about copyright claims for somewhere between, I'd have to check it again, but I think it was 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, it was nasty, I got help writing up essentially what is a legal demand to release it, because it wasn't just me like being like, hell no. And, I have my multi-channel network that's sounding off on it too. Tell them this isn't yours. You don't own. They claimed, like Warner Brothers Discovery, when they put their stuff up on Discovery, they pulled the same thing. Like, it had a lot of us in it too. This one was heavier with folks like Darth News, Andy Signor, but a lot of us were in it. Okay. And in the Warners, they highlight other people. There was myself and there were other people, just to say. But when I showed my clips, just like Signor is doing now, they pulled the same bullshit. They demonetized videos for it. And it's crazy considering, okay, like the interview that I just showed you before, I don't think that'll be claimed because, inside it, they don't mind you showcasing that. But Netflix, Discovery, they not only steal your content, but they put it behind a paywall. See, the insult, there's multi-levels to that. Like I said, they take your content, they put it behind a paywall, they monetize it. Now, for me, I don't get into the back and forth, like fair use. If they're going to use something in there, I'm not. I'll call it out. I'll call bullshit on a lot of it. But at the end of the day, I'm not really going to rage. I'll rage about the idea that I didn't give permission for that, because these places will flag you for anything. But it's the flagging, them then trying to claim. So they also, the same thing, Warner went even further. Warner went back to the original live streams where some of the material came from, and they flagged my original live streams too. They essentially, they didn't take new video. They went back to old material and they claimed it as if it was its own. So they took the place where the clips came from and they tried to pretend that they were theirs. Now, again, there have been people that have talked about litigation. It comes up all the time. Man, you should sue. But the problem is, you're talking companies, multi-billion dollar, they have lawyers on hand, armies of them for shit like this. They would drag you forever. They'll try to find a friendly court. They'll bleed you financially. And then afterwards, it's a coin flip. Are you actually going to win? And when you do, are you going to recomp some of that money that you spent too? Heather, thanks for the vibe. I wonder why Team Scamber didn't give the documentary all the evidence that was withheld, especially the therapy notes. Very strange. I believe that they're planning on putting that in a tell-all book. That's my opinion. I believe that there's so-called smoking guns. They're going to try to put that stuff in a tell-all book. We've already seen books come out, but I think we'll get one. And even if it gets shut down with an order from a court, they're like, oh my God, you got to shut that down. That's ridiculous. They hope that they can frame that as, remember the discussion we had about shutting down the non-disclosure agreement? Like Depp, if he wanted an easy win, he could have gone in and gone after Heard for a violation of non-disclosure agreement. But he didn't. He went after her for something that was much harder to win. If one of the reasons that you don't go after the NDA is because people will ask, why are you trying to shut someone up? And I wonder if with the book, you can get it out in public to a point. You can get backlash to it, even if it gets shut down. Oh, they're trying to silence. Here's real evidence again. I think that's a PR move, personally. It's not just the on-the-level PR move and the money PR move. I think it's more than that. Thanks for the 5 months. Love you to laugh. Karma will get her. It's just so evil. It's insane. Like this, she has a lot of enablers. She by herself would be nothing. She's had some of the most powerful organizations on the planet back in this quest. And again, people think, well, trial is over. Oh no, there's a different trial going on. It is a retrial in the court of public opinion because they lost the one thing that they figured was unlosable. I know. Thanks for the 20 there too. Thanks for your insight. Hey, thank you all too. I like reading exactly what people are saying. I mean, that's to trademark your videos. Well, I mean, by its own thing. Again, you have your videos, which are they're your property. Again, I don't care that people come and clip them and stuff like that. But my problem is, again, using it to strike, using it where I'm not supposed to be able to comment on somebody using my own shit to try to reference it in a way that it's not real. Again, trying to make it sound like, you're just some looky-loo bystander that happened on the case while it was popping up. I'm like, no, I reject that. Again, you can't have it both ways. You can't complain about how I've made videos since 2018 and also complain about that other, oh, well, you just popped up on the trial. You can't have it both ways. It's one or the other, baby. It's one or the other. I don't know. I find, like I said, I find all this stuff fascinating. It's not stopping. There's more of it. Remember, there's another narrative that was destroyed too. I'll have a video come out on that tomorrow. It is not Netflix oriented. There's something else. I want to present it in its context. So I want you to see it. But there's been some nasty narratives. And again, you see sometimes where they're coming from. And if you think some of these random Twitter accounts out there, I'm not talking about little sock puppet accounts, but some of the louder ones, you don't think that they're having communication with PR and stuff. You're wrong. Some of them very much do. And that is not conjecture. That is not fantasy. Some of them very much, they have that open connection. It's just, that's 100%. Is 100%. We knew it before the trial, when they're like, oh, when you have some of them texting about how they're in contact with lawyers. Oh, well, they know the identity of this person they've doxed. but they want to hold on to it to see what the lawyers want to do with it. Again, they were in constant communication. So it's funny that they complain about, again, oh, you talked to it, Lord, you talked to one of the people that has insight on the case, and yet they're doxing people for that side. They're doxing them, trying to ruin their lives for them. They're talking about it. They built, it's just fucking crazy stuff, and it's real. Kings, thanks for the 5. Uno reverse, copyright claim, Tiny Toons episode 1. They used my imagination in childhood without my permission. Yeah, I was going to copyright claim Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'd be like, you stole my childhood, you bastards. Dots, thanks for the 12 months there. Thanks, Doug, for telling it like it is. Hey, somebody, so I had a text or a message with somebody today, and they were like, I ended up, having a communication. They were like, hey, this is great. I'm honored to have a conversation. I was like, no, you know what? I'm honored because anybody can pick up a microphone, anybody out there. And a lot of people do, but people have amplified my voice because it's the same thing a lot of us say, but people have been, they've allowed me to have that. They've amplified it. So I'm honored. So telling it like it is, I'm just glad you let me say that. Again, you're nothing without the amplification of it. If you're just screaming to the void as one person, yes, you may have all the truth and wisdom in the world, but ultimately, the only way to convey truth is to have thousands. And that's what they hate. They hate the fact that you have hundreds of thousands of people that decided the truth on this and many other things need to come out. Heather, thanks for the 2 there. They should just eat that big serving of crow. Yeah, if they were smart, what they would do is they would have just let it all fall by the wayside. They would have said, trial, we lost, and they could have done rehabilitation with her in probably a couple of years. It would have worked because they want to rehabilitate her. They could have started in that. They could have done anything with it. They could. We've seen some horrible human beings that have managed careers in the aftermath of doing some very, very terrible things. Now, none of them have tried to weaponize. Well, I take that back. Asia Argento, for example. Asia Argento tried to weaponize the Me Too movement. Got caught actually with a person that was underage. As far as the statute, I think they were 17, and then came out and said, you're supposed to believe women. That means even when I'm accused, you need to still believe me. That's forgotten. That's absolutely forgotten. And the same thing would have happened to her over a timeline. Again, I'm not saying that she would have been marketable in large movies, but smaller movies, maybe, possibly. I don't know. Or maybe career would have ended. At least she would have had something in the aftermath. But no, this is something different. It's something much crazier. Nikki, thanks for the 8 months. Thank you, Tug, for everything you do. So many victims and people out there. Well, like I said, I appreciate all of you that, if you've trusted a lot of folks with your voice. And again, we don't have to agree on anything besides the fact, that's one of the things that matters too. Agree or disagree. We disagree on a lot of things in life. That's okay. At the end of the day, it's still about putting out truth. And there is a major problem. We all agree that there are needs out there that survivors need to be heard, and that false accusations are an absolute disaster, and they take away from that. What's up, Fallen Hero? Thank you for the additional gift and membership. Thank you for that too. Anyway, I think I'm going to end here. I think it's a good conversation. We'll come back to it. We'll actually have a few. We may have one more discussion about Netflix. I don't know. But we'll see. We'll see. I want to see what happens in the aftermath of all of it. I want to see exactly how that comes together. Because it's not just that. You got to give it a moment and see exactly what happens there. So Braxton, thanks for 2. No trouble for her doing coke while on the stand. Oh, that just all of the all of this stuff that was brought up with, you know, like the mugging for pictures, the way that she tried to manipulate the jury, even a jury member supposedly came out and said, yeah, we felt like we were, you know, they were manipulating us and more, the threats toward jury, none of that stuff, none of it. Because again, it doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't at all. If Johnny Depp would have lost, they would have talked about, if you saw the same actions come out, they would talk about the way the judge, jury, all of them, they were treated like garbage, how there were threats. Oh, she had to go in and protect them. Again, you could see the narrative that was going to be implied. The only problem is she lost. But they still keep the narrative. They keep the narrative. They just spin it a different way. Amanda, thanks for the 20 there. Scammers cultists have been trying to get pro-Depp content yanked from YouTube for years. Yes, I very much know that. Eve Barlow tried to take me down quite a few times. And again, you remember they got Adam Waldman suspended off Twitter. They got him nailed off of that with a false flagging campaign that was definitely, Amber Heard was the one that caused it. She very much pointed the finger at him, got him flagged off there. So yeah, seems like the was made so they can use copyright claim for the original content creators because it's featured in their show. Wow, yeah, I mean it does seem quite crazy, doesn't it? Now we'll see how it plays. Like I said, we'll see how things go forward. I am very curious about how everything goes, you know, from here. But it's not going to stop. Again, if they're going to do like things like this, it just tells you. And again, remember, this didn't happen in a vacuum. You had that film festival before. Just go back and revisit all of that. Look at the push, the promotional for it. Look at the accounts that do it, especially the heaviest ones. And you tell me which are just quote unquote fan accounts and which ones are a lot more in that too. I mean, you can tell. What's up, Culture Casino? What's up, man? Thanks for the 20. Go get them, Tug. Man, people need to go check out Culture Casino. By the way, they hit a milestone the other day. I'm giving them props. Congratulations. It's good. One of the great things in this sphere is that we can all, a lot of us are finding the same folks. The listen and believe crowd, they aren't just a blight on that specific social narrative. They're a blight on so many others as well. And you have people standing up all over. And the one common denominator that so many people have is that we're fighting the same folks. We're fighting the same institutions, the same institutional BS that comes up. It's crazy stuff. But anyway, all right, I'm done. I could go on all day. I got a doctor appointment tomorrow, so we probably will not have a live stream. You know, but anyway, we'll see what goes on. If we have one, it'll be really late. So maybe we'll catch people in other times. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to end here. I appreciate you folks sincerely too. That's one takeaway I do want to throw in there. I know so many of you, like I said, you've done so much out there, and you're noticed and appreciated for sure, and loved. Thank you.